Hey guys, welcome. We're back at it again, episode 41. Wow, sports and shorts of sorts. I'm Ren City, and let's hop right into our Jersey segment. This is, each episode we go by whatever number we have, and yeah, we that dictate who we honor. We're in episode 41. Let's jump to 41. First 41 I think of when you think of anybody with that number. Think of the German guy, Dirk Nowitzki, NBA legend, icon. His statue was outside the Dallas arena. He did it all with the one franchise. He surprised most people that he was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks with the ninth overall pick in the '98 draft. Don Nelson wanted him, though. That was his guy. And the Mavs drafted Robert Tractor Trailer. Total intentions of moving him to the Bucks for Nowitzki. And Nelson also got Pat Garrity out of the deal. One of the biggest deals ever. And I'm not trying to shit on Tractor Trailer here. May he rest in peace. He had a great career at the University of Michigan. An okay NBA career, but yeah, unfortunately, he passed away at 34 years old. He struggled with weight issues, but like I said, may he rest in peace. We're back to honoring Dirk here. He came in scrawny 7-footer, very exposed on the defensive end. People called him Irk because there was no D. So I guess, did what he had to do, tried to make it in the NBA. Mark Cuban purchased the team from Ross Pro and for Ross Pro Jr. in 2000, and that season Dirk was runner-up for most improved player. From there, he just kept improving, kept elevating his game. They'd have a sick triple threat with Michael Finley and one of Dirk's good friends, Steve Nash. Those Mavs teams were so talented, but just couldn't bust through to the finals, either untimely injuries or, facing really good destined teams. Nash would leave in free agency because Cuban thought he was too old, where Nash would win two MVPs in Phoenix. But, yeah, Nash was gone. People were aging. Dirk was that guy, and he thrived in that role, putting up huge numbers, becoming one of the best power forwards ever along the way. Get to the finals where he'd face the Miami Heat, and they jump out to a 2-0 lead before D Wade and Shaq came back to get the Heat their first title. Next season, Dirk put up huge numbers, leading the league with 67 wins, first ever European-born MVP. But that's where the highs and lows come in. They faced the Golden State Warriors. You might remember them: Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes. The We Believe 8-seeded Warriors upset the Mavs in the first round. One of the biggest upsets in NBA history. Dirk called it a low point in his career. Then another few disappointing seasons, where they couldn't make it past to the finals. Then Dirk had a legendary run. They'd beat a very tough Portland Trailblazers team. Then they'd sweep two-time champion LA Lakers before beating a young and upcoming OKC Thunder team with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. But this time they'd face the Miami Heat in the finals, but this team would be a little different. This wouldn't be Shaq and Wade. This would be LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh, the new villains of the NBA. In Game 4, Dirk fought off the flu to help the Mavs even the series. And then he was later mocked by D Wade and LeBron, fake coughing, and I guess that really pissed Dirk off. And he'd have the last laugh, winning the next two games, Finals MVP. Like I said, this run was legendary. You heard those teams I mentioned. He beat a lot of great teams on the way, but man, Dirk finished 14-time All-Star, 4 All-NBA first team, 5 All-NBA second, 3 All-NBA third, even won NBA three-point contest as a 7-footer, obviously on the 75th anniversary team. His 41's retired by the Mavericks, and he was just enshrined to the Basketball Hall of Fame this past year. Plus, he was a stud playing for Germany internationally, leading them to a surprise bronze medal in 2002, laying foundation for the German basketball team, which just won the FIBA World Cup. So they've come a long way since Dirk initially laced it up for them. But yeah, one of the best shooting big men ever. I know Karl Anthony Towns has tried to take that role, but I still got to give it to Dirk. Man, something else. Next baller, one of the best outlet passing big men ever. Still an underrated guy, I think. Wes Unseld, a beast at Louisville, two-time All-American. Did so well his 31's retired there. He'd get drafted second overall by the Bullets, which are now the Washington Wizards. But yeah, tough decision as he was, the hometown Kentucky Colonels of the ABA drafted him first, but Unseld chose the NBA. And, we're happy he did. He chose the 41 and he came to the league, lit it up. He not only won Rookie of the Year, but he won MVP that season. Him and Wilt are the only two to ever do that impressive rookie and MVP. But yeah, he led the Bullets, who were in last season before, to a division title. He was one of the best rebounders ever. Part of those Bullets teams that would make four finals from 71 to 79. They'd win the 78 championship over the Supersonics, and Wes Unseld was that finals MVP. Five All-Star games over his career, part of the 50th and 75th anniversary team. His 41's retired by the Washington franchise, and he's in both the College and Basketball Hall of Fame. Like I said, I think he's one of the most underrated MVPs the NBA ever had. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2020 at the age of 74, but his son continues his NBA legacy. He's the current coach of the Washington Wizards, a struggling Washington Wizards, but he's a good coach, Wes Unseld Jr. And next NBA player I think is worth mentioning, Glenn Rice. One of the smoothest jump shots you'd ever see. He's a beast in Michigan, where he still holds a lot of records, including first in career points, single season field goals made and attempted. His memorable run in the 89 March Madness was unreal. He scored 184 points in tournament play, a record that still stands. And he guided the Wolverines to the 89 NCAA basketball title. So he was slated to go in the middle of the first round, but that amazing run had him going early. And he'd go to the Heat, where he'd help them win their first ever playoff series. But, yeah, they were promptly swept by the Bulls, after. But that following season, the Heat would get to the playoffs and win their first games. So, sorry, they were swept the first season by the Bulls, and then the next season, Rice would help them win there. But yeah, 10th in scoring with 22.3 the one season. He didn't make an all-star team there, but he outshined Reggie Miller and won the three-point contest. Heat wouldn't make the playoffs, so we'd get shipped to the Hornets, where the Heat would get Alonzo Mourning. Worked out pretty well for them. But yeah, with the Hornets, Rice would make three All-Star games, best in 97 when he was averaging 27 points per game, which was third in the league. And yeah, he scored 20 points in the third quarter of the All-Star game, which got him All-Star MVP. So he'd end up joining the Lakers, where he was a third option behind Kobe and Shaq. He's part of that Laker team that won an NBA title. There's a little bit of drama, I guess, behind the scene between Rice, Jackson, and Jerry West. So whatever happened, Rice was gone, and he had his ring, but he'd move on, have a few other stops to end his career. And his number 41 is retired by the Michigan Wolverines. Doesn't have that in the NBA, though. Another 41 in the NBA is a current one. I'm talking about Hawk Sadiq Bey. Originally drafted by the Pistons, Sadiq is a solid NBA scorer. A few seasons ago, March 17th, 2022, there was only one game on TV, Detroit and Orlando. Some were like, really? What is this? Sadiq would drop 51 in that game, being the only game on TV. All eyes on him. Yeah, he's a solid contributor on that team. But hey, a few other shout-outs in the NBA. 41, Canadian stud, Kelly Olynyk. Add some good size to the front court of the Jazz. Trey Lyles, another Canadian stud, plays for the Kings. He's a 41. And two more nostalgic guys, Eldon Campbell, if you might remember him with the Lakers or the Hornets, and James Posey, title winner who has played with a few different teams. But yeah, let's leave the hardwood for the diamond. First number 41, Tom Seaver, New York Met icon. He played for the Reds, White Sox, and Red Sox, but he'll always be a Met. Over his 20 seasons, Weaver put up huge numbers. Immediate star, winning NL Rookie of the Year in 67, 12-time All-Star, 3 NL Cy Youngs. During his dominant stretch, he led the NL 3 times in wins, 3 times in ERAs, and 5 times in strikeouts. Just insane. He threw a no-hitter once in his career, 78, but yeah, he's part of the elusive 300 wins and 3,000 strikeouts club. He's 18th on the all-time winning list with 311, and 6th all-time in strikeouts with 3640. So first ballot Hall of Famer. He's in the Mets and Reds Hall of Fame. His 41 is retired with the Mets. Fortunately, Seaver passed away in 2020 at the age of 75. Next 41, Eddie Matthews, a player way before my time. He's the only player to have represented the Braves in 3 different cities they called home: Boston, Milwaukee, and Atlanta, where they are now. With the Braves, he'd make 12 All-Star games, leading the L in home runs 2 different occasions. He'd win 1 title with the Braves in 57, and he'd play his last 2 seasons with the Astros and Tigers, where he'd win another World Series ring as a member of the Tigers. But phenomenal career, but he never won an MVP. He'd finished second on a few different occasions, and he was the 7th person to eclipse the 500 home run mark and would easily make the Hall of Fame. He's also in the Braves Hall of Fame, where, yeah, he has his 41 retired, but Leaving the baseball diamond for the gridiron, first number 41. Spent his entire career with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm talking about Charlie Waters. Great career at Clemson University. He was all ACC selection his senior year. He started his career at cornerback where he'd struggle, but he moved to safety, and man, he'd thrive there. 3 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Second Pro Team, nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2001, but he was not elected. So I don't think he'll make it, but he never experienced a losing season and only missed the playoffs once in his career, which is pretty good. Next football player, Eugene Robinson. He attended Colgate before going undrafted and going to the Seahawks. Spent 7 years with the Seahawks, 2 Pro Bowls, All Pro second team in '93. He also led the league interceptions that season. After Seattle, he'd go to my Packers, where he was part of that Super Bowl winning team that beat the Patriots. And he was also a member of the Packers the following season when they got back to the Super Bowl and lost to John Elway and the Broncos. But after his stint in Green Bay, he'd go to Atlanta before wrapping it up in Carolina. Yeah, he'd get his third Pro Bowl in Atlanta there. He's part of the Seahawks' 35th anniversary team and is tied for 13th in the all-time NFL interceptions list with 57. Next 41 also happened to play safety. I'm talking about Roman Harper. He was a beast at Alabama. Helped him get drafted early in the second round by the Saints, where he spent the first 8 years of his career, making 2 Pro Bowls, and was a member of that Super Bowl 44 winning Saints team that beat Peyton Manning and the Colts. He ended up playing a few seasons with Carolina before returning to New Orleans to finish his career. He's in the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame. Last 41 I'll mention is a current player in the NFL, and yeah, he's with the Saints as well. I'm talking Alvin Kamara. He's got quite a resume for a 28-year-old. He bounced around a bit in college before settling at Tennessee, and his time at the Volunteers got him drafted in the third round. He's a beast right out of the gate, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, where he also made second team All Pro and the Pro Bowl. That's a pretty good rookie season. He's already made 5 Pro Bowls, a second team All Pro. Very crucial to the Saints offense and in his whole time there. And like he's tied for the most rushing touchdowns in a game with 6. And he's been involved in other sports too. NASCAR named Kamara as the growth and engagement advisor. So he's been more interested in that sport. And he's kind of had some legal issues too. You got to mention he hit a guy 8 times on camera in a nightclub and had to pay some cash. And the NFL also suspended him 3 games. But yeah, we weren't there. We don't know what happened. He's done his time, and yeah, he's trying to help the Saints win that woeful NFC South right now. And yeah, wrapping up the official wrap up here for the Jersey segment, we're going to hockey. First number 41 I thought of was goalie Mike Smith. I know technically he's not retired yet. You know, he did play some games last year with the Oilers, and he's considered a free agent right now. But yeah, he came on with the Dallas Stars and had a stint following Tampa Bay, but he didn't really thrive until he became a Coyote. 2012, he even helped them get to the Western Conference Finals. He's been a solid goaltender his entire career, earning 2 All-Star nods. He was a member of the Olympic gold medal winning Canada team at the Sochi Olympics. The only other 241s I thought in hockey, remember goalie Jocelyn Thibault and Boston Bruins center Jason Allison. But that's it for jerseys. Let's hop right into football. I'm a day later doing this because I had a wonderful time spending my Christmas with some family because I'll be working over the holidays. But yeah, NFL, we'll jump in a time machine. The Monday Night Football, Week 14, Packers-Giants. I was hoping my Giants would come and win this one, but yeah, it was the DeVito party again. His agent was out. We got to see Tommy Cutlets doing his thing. It was the Giants' third win in a row and kind of put a damper in the Packers' playoff hopes. And then how would you follow that? You'd have a lot of emotion between the Titans and Dolphins because Frank Wycheck had just passed away leading up before the game. And this one came down to a pretty historic collapse here. Mike McDaniel said this collapse would bring the team together, but yeah, the Dolphins looked like they'd have it. And then they just fall apart. The teams down 14 points in the final 3 minutes, had lost 767 straight games. But no, the Titans came back. They were down 27-13. Did what they had to do. Will Levis looked like a hero. Miami was scratching their head, but maybe McDaniels is right, and they bounced back from that. And then it was announced after those games that Justin Herbert would be done for the year from the injury he picked up on the weekend. But that was a time machine. Let's roll into Week 15. On Thursday, we had Chargers and Raiders. and it was ugly. You'd have 6 unanswered touchdowns by the Raiders going into halftime, 42-0. So let's have another one. They got their 7th straight touchdown when Aiden O'Connell would hit Adams. It wasn't until Easton Stick would hit a very wide open Josh Palmer to make it 49-7, but this was ugly. It was a scoregami, which is kind of cool, a new score, 63-21, but what a beatdown. It was a beatdown so bad that the next day the Chargers fired head coach Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco. I guess the 42-point blowout was the final nail in the coffin. So Jeff Smith will be taking over as interim head coach, and JoJo Wooden will step in for interim general manager role, excuse me. This is a lost season for the Chargers already. Injuries, the key positions, a lot of money tied into some older players. You know, when your skilled players are your highest paid, that's a norm. But when they're also your oldest, potentially, it's tough. We'll see what this new crew does going forward. They'll need Herbert back healthy, and hopefully a new coaching staff can help him resurrect his career. Because, yeah, Chargers look bad. Vikings and Bengals, we had some Saturday football going on. This one was a dandy. You had Nick Mullins starting as Joshua Dobbs is down the third on the chart. And yeah, this one looked like the Vikings might have it wrapped up, but with 39 seconds left, Browning would hit T. Higgins for his second touchdown of the game, the fourth overtime. And in overtime, Evan McPherson would hit the game-winning field goal to give Cincinnati a remarkable comeback, keep their playoff hopes alive in that tough AFC, and keep the Vikings scratching their head on how they lost that one. Steelers versus Colts. This looked like a good start for the Steelers when Trubisky would score. They missed the extra point, and then he'd hit Deontay Johnson. They had a lead. But then Gardner Minshew would hit Zach Moss before he hit DJ Montgomery, and the Colts had a lead going into the halftime. From there, the Colts would just continue doing their thing. There'd be a huge hit on Michael Pittman in the game and by DeMonte Casey. And yeah, he's been suspended for the rest of the year for that hit. It was a launcher where he went head first, but in the suspension they were saying it's for repeated violations of playing rules intended to protect the health and safety of players. Steelers are in a bit of a downfall right now. It's kind of why I wore this jersey. I'm not a Steelers guy. It's my dad's old jersey, so you know they're losing. I thought I'd throw it on. But yeah, we'll see what the Steelers can do there. Try to keep Mike Tomlin from having his first ever losing season. Broncos and Lions. This was the last game on Saturday night. Had a Broncos team who were feeling themselves. You know, you had a Lions team trying to make up for their disastrous game against the Bears. You'd have no scoring until the second quarter, until the Lions went crazy. Goff would have 3 touchdown passes that quarter. One to Sam Laporta, one to Gibbs, and one to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Early in the third, Broncos would get back when Russell would hit little Jordan Humphrey for a touchdown. But Goff, man, was he feeling it. He'd hit Laporta for a second touchdown of the game. Jamar Gibbs would run in a touchdown this time. Then Goff would throw his 5th touchdown of the game to rookie tight end sensation Sam Laporta. Got his 3rd touchdown of the game. There were scenes where Russell Wilson was getting yelled at by Coach Sean Payton. He said, you know, things happen when you're on the sideline, but big bounce back win for the Lions, who remind the rest of the league what they're capable of. And how about Sam Laporta? Can a tight end win Offensive Player of the Year? This guy's been on fire. In games when he's on fire, it's crazy. I have him in fantasy. He can help out. Giants and Saints. I was talking about DeVito a bit up in the few minutes earlier and how they beat the Packers. Not a lot going into this one. The Saints they took it to the Giants. They were enough as seeing DeVito's agent get as much screen time as Taylor Swift. And after they sacked DeVito, they did the Italian thing. But yeah, this was all Saints. They crushed the Giants 24-6. And DeVito was knocked out of the game briefly, but he passed concussion test and came back. So big win for the Saints. As I mentioned with Kamara earlier, that division isn't great, but they can still win it. Bears-Browns, what a weird game this was. You had a wicked awesome play when it looked like Justin Fields would get sacked by Myles Garrett, but he scampered around and hit Cole Kmet for a touchdown. But Joe Flacco would answer, and you kind of have a back-and-forth game here. Flacco would throw a pick 6, which wasn't ideal. But yeah, he'd bounce back, and he'd hit Amari Cooper on a perfectly thrown ball, and Cooper would take it, run right to the end zone, tiptoeing down the sideline the whole way to put the Browns up late. But Yeah, or sorry, the Browns would quickly get it back, and then they'd hit the field goal to go up late with 32 seconds. And then the Bears would have a chance to come back. Justin Fields would toss up a perfect Hail Mary. It'd get batted down right into the Bears receiver, Darnell Mooney, right into his gut, but it'd bounce out of his gut, get intercepted by D'Anthony Bell. Wild ending as the Browns pull off a stunner. Like the Bears should have won. It was in his hands. But hey, Hail Marys, sometimes they're answered, sometimes not. Falcons and Panthers in that terrible NFC South. These two had to play. Falcons were looking to try to stay in the hunt to win the division. The Panthers were just looking to win again, look for their second win. Cordarrelle Patterson would score for the Falcons, the only touchdown of the game. But don't cut out Eddie Pinheiro. He'd hit some clutch kicks. 3 field goals, and the last one would be a 23-yarder as time expired after a 17-play drive to end the game. So good on Bryce Young there, but no touchdowns for the Panthers, but they get the win. Second win of the season, first for interim head coach Chris Tabor. Yeah, who knows what the Falcons could do with good quarterback play, but give it up to Carolina. They've won twice this year, and they've never led during the game. They've hit kicks to end the game to win both games. Give it to them, I guess. A win's a win. Buccaneers and Packers. This one had lots of playoff implications on it. And yeah, the Green Bay defense did not show up. Baker Mayfield came in Lambeau and had some history. He was the first visiting quarterback in Lambeau to have a perfect passer rating at 158.3. Like, he just shredded us. Love had some good plays for the Packers, but when your defense can't stop anybody, it makes it tough. And earlier in the week, I heard Mina Kimes alluding to how historically bad this Packers defense has been playing at times. And yeah, it showed. We'll see if the Packers, their playoff hopes are really taking a hit while, Tampa Bay's really went up. But still a few games ago. We'll see what happens. Jets and Dolphins. Dolphins were coming off that tough loss, and they didn't have Tyreek Hill in this one, but it did not seem to matter. Tua Tagovailoa would hit Jalen Waddle on a 60-yard bomb, causing everybody to do the Waddle dance. But yeah, Zach Wilson for the Jets would get knocked out with a concussion. He didn't return. Trevor Siemian replaced him, did nothing. Dolphins skunked the Jets 30-0, ending any playoff dreams the Jets might have had, increasing their playoff drought to 13 years. Yikes. Chiefs and Patriots, you had the Chiefs coming in after losing 2 games, hoping to bounce back. They had no Pacheco, but his backups filled in pretty good. Jerick McKinnon would throw a pass to Rice for a touchdown. Zappi would answer that hitting the Henry, but Mahomes would lead his team down before halftime like he always does, and this time Jerick McKinnon would run one in. And then the other running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, would get a score in the second half, which, yeah, gave the Chiefs the big win. They needed it. Bill Belichick, another L for him, which is, it's rumored he's going to be let go at the end of the season, so we'll see what happens with that. But kind of big news for Canadian football. Former CFL standout Nathan Rourke was picked up by the Patriots off waivers from the Jaguars. You know what? It'd be cool to see him get some time in the regular season. The Victoria, BC native he's been a gem. I'd like to see him play in the regular season. Come on, Bill, put him in. Come on, what do you got? Bailey Zappi? What do you got? Texans, Titans. You had no C.J. Stroud, who'd be missing this game, so backup Case Keenum would get his time to shine. Titans had a great start, getting the lead early, but Keenum would throw some plays. A pick six didn't go his way. You had Kaimi Fairburn returning, the kicker for the Texans. He'd hit one before halftime. He'd get a few more, but then Keenum would throw one to his own team for a touchdown, hitting Noah Brown to tie it up and force overtime. And in overtime, Fairbairn would cap up his return to the lineup by hitting a 54-yard walk-off field goal. The Texans a huge road win without their rookie sensation. But Case Keenum, he's a good backup. 49ers, Cardinals. It looked like the Cardinals were off to a great start when Connor would score, putting them ahead, but it was all 49ers from there. Samuel would get a big touchdown pass from Purdy, and the defense would get in on it when Charvarius Ward would pick off Kyler Murray and return it to the house. McCaffrey would catch a touchdown from Purdy, and then McCaffrey would get so wide open, he'd make the catch, fall down, get up, and run it in for a touchdown. He was a beast. I was playing against McCaffrey in fantasy. He killed me, ruined my dreams. But, yeah, 49ers look like that Super Bowl favorite team we expect out of them, and they'd pummel the Cardinals to win their 6th in a row. Commanders and Rams. Commanders without their leading rusher, Brian Robinson, in this one, and it showed. The Rams just looked the better team in this one. Stafford would hit a very wide open Cooper Kupp for a 62-yard bomb. Howell would hit Curtis Samuel for the Commanders' first touchdown of the day, but he'd struggle throughout. And after going down even more, he'd get benched for Jacoby Brissett, who would immediately spark Washington. They'd get one touchdown to McLaurin, and then they'd get one where it looked like he was scored, but he was stopped short. And after what seemed like 100 plays, Washington would finally score again when Brissett would hit Samuel for his second of the day. But typical Commanders year, they'd miss the extra point when it was blocked. Then the onside kick, they weren't anywhere close. So big win for the Rams there. Cowboys and Bills, this was a hyped up game between two big names in the NFL, and Cowboys were feeling good after beating the Eagles. Bills were trying to ride some momentum of beating the Chiefs, but only one team showed up, the Bills. They came out and they crushed the Cowboys. This one wasn't even close. You'd have the Bills winning 31-10, and that was after CeeDee Lamb got a late touchdown to make the scoreline closer. But I picked 49ers Bills in the Super Bowl. This looks more like the Bills team I expected, not the ones we've seen earlier in the year. The Sunday nightcap, you had Ravens Jacksonville, two teams hoping to do well in the AFC. And this one kind of went all Ravens. Trevor Lawrence would hit Jamal Agnew for a 65-yard touchdown, but Ravens would extend their lead when Edwards would run one in. But some disappointing news for the Ravens. Their young undrafted running back, Keaton Mitchell, tore his ACL and will miss the rest of the season, so that's rough for them. Eagles Seahawks was announced for the game. Drew Lock he would be starting for Geno Smith, and Eagles would go ahead first using that good old tush push, and Jalen Hurts gone in. But after exchanging some field goals, Seattle would score a touchdown when Kenneth Walker would run one in. And that was kind of nice. You had Drew Lock, the quarterback, throwing some lead blocks for him, which was kind of cool. Eagles would answer with a tush push. And yeah, it looked like the Eagles were just going to move the ball down the field, eat some time. But then Jalen Hurts would throw it to the end zone. And I don't know why he would need to. They were up and they could have used the field goal to make it a 7-point game. But he tossed one that reminded us of Carson Wentz. But picked off. Drew Lock would lead his team down the field before hitting Jackson Smith and Jigba on a 29-yard touchdown pass with 28 seconds left, putting the Seahawks up and giving them the big win. This was massive for Seattle, keeping their playoff hopes alive while giving Philly their third loss in a row. Not good look for Philly. Not a good look for Hurts, who was questionable coming in because of his sickness. So with a few games left in the season, a lot to be decided here. Champions League. He had group play come to a conclusion in the week last week. You had Spanish side Sevilla and PSV. Lens would win a wild one over Spanish side Sevilla, and PSV would draw Arsenal. So what that did in Group B, the Lens victory gave them a slim chance of advancing, but that PSV and Arsenal draw didn't help them. Arsenal won Group B. PSV advances as well, while Lens secures third and will play in the Europa League playoffs. Group C, you had a thrilling game in the German capital that went back and forth, but Union Berlin would lose. Real Madrid comes out off top 3-2. Last year's champs Napoli would beat Braga 2-0. So Real Madrid already had this group wrapped up. They went perfect 6-0 in group play. Napoli was already looking to move on, and that win over Braga clinched that, while Braga moves to the Europa League playoffs. Salzburg and Benfica was dominated by the Portuguese side. And the highlight of that game was Angel Di Maria scoring for Benfica from the corner spot in the Olympico. And Inter Milan and Real Sociedad would play to a 0-0 draw. And leading up to that match, we knew Real Sociedad and Inter Milan had already advanced. We just didn't know who. And that scoreless draw is Real Sociedad winning the group. Benfica takes third after winning that head-to-head with Salzburg. Copenhagen picked a massive win in Galatasaray, and Bayern Munich would beat Man U 1-0, putting United last in Group A. It's the first time that a Premier League side has finished last in a Champions League group since 2012-13, and only the fourth team to do so. Bayern already had this group locked up. Copenhagen, with that win, punched their ticket into the knockout stages, while Galatasaray moves to the Europa League playoffs. Huge disappointment for Man U finishing last in that group. Leipzig would beat Young Boys, and Man City would be in a tighter game than they thought, beating Red Star 3-2. Going into that final group match, we knew the outcome. Man City had won. Leipzig will be joining them, but Young Boys finished third, and they'll be in the Europa League playoffs. Antwerp held on to a monumental win over Catalan giants Barcelona 3-2 in Belgium, and Porto and Shakhtar had a shootout where Portuguese side Porto would win 5-3. Barcelona barely took that group, and they were even with Porto, but had one goal better differential. So Porto will join them as they move on, and Shakhtar Donetsk will be in the Europa League playoffs. But Antwerp, they got that historical win over Barcelona. They'll be pumped about that. Group E, big win in Scotland as Celtic beat last year's Eredivisie winners Feyenoord. Atletico Madrid would skunk Lazio 2-0. With Atletico Madrid beating Lazio, they clinched the group. Lazio finished second and they move on, while Feyenoord will be moving to the Europa League playoffs. Celtic, they got one win in there beating Feyenoord, but disappointing group play for them otherwise. Some bad passing in front of the keeper would lead to Dortmund taking a lead over PSG, but the Parisian Giants would equalize and secure a draw. In Newcastle, it looked like the Geordie side would win when they got an early goal through Joelinton, but Christian Pulisic and then Samuel Chikwueze would score in the 83rd minute to just suck the air out of the stadium. Big comeback win for Milan and disappointment for Newcastle. This was the group of death, and yeah, Dortmund was already advancing. We just didn't know who would join them. The draw helped PSG secure, so they were good to go on. AC Milan, they went through after beating Newcastle, so it was super tight. AC Milan will go to Europa League. Newcastle finishes last in the group, becoming the fifth Premier side to do so, joining Man U, who just had done it the day before. So that concludes the group play in Champions League. All the knockout fixtures have just been decided. They'll take place on the 13th and 14th. You'll have Copenhagen versus Man City, Leipzig versus Real Madrid, PSG versus Real Sociedad, and Lazio and Bayern Munich. Then a week later, you'll have the other matches, PSV and Dortmund, Inter Milan, Atletico Madrid, Porto, Arsenal. That should be a good game. And then a meeting of last year's Italian and Spanish champions, Napoli and Barcelona. So after those games are played, they'll play a second leg a few weeks later to determine who moves on. The baby cousin of the Champions League, the Europa League, it's a little different. Teams that win their group automatically move on to the knockout stages, while the runner-ups in that group enter a playoff to play the teams that are dropping down from the Champions League, if you got me. So your group winners are West Ham, Brighton, Rangers, Atalanta, Liverpool, Villarreal, Slavia Praha, and Bayern Leverkusen. So they're already on to the round of 16. The playoff matches, the round of 32, like I said, you have the second place finishers in the groups in Europa versus third place in Champions League. So you got some interesting matchups. You have Galatasaray, Sparta Praha, Shakhtar Donetsk and Marseille, Feyenoord and Roma, Young Boys and Sporting, AC Milan and Rennes, Braga and Karabag, Benfica Toulouse, and Lens and Freiburg. They'll take place on the 15th and the 22nd. The Europa Conference League, similar thing. Whoever finished second in those groups will face whoever finished in third in the Europa League, and those matches will take place the same time as the Europa League. You had some weekend footy. Tottenham started the week right off for the Premier League side as they beat Forest 2-0. Chelsea, they skunked Sheffield United 2-0. Scary scenes in Bournemouth versus Luton. When the game tied at 1, Tom Lockyer would collapse right near the center circle and require immediate attention. The second time in months that this has happened to Lockyer. He also collapsed in the championship playoff final. The medical staff and paramedics did their thing and they were able to get him off, recovering from his episode, but the game was abandoned and there's been no official announcement on when it'll be finished. Obviously, the health and safety of the player comes first, but for Lockyer, this could be it. To collapse twice on the pitch during a game in one calendar year, that can't be good. He might need to retire. Man City looked poised to cruise to an easy win after two first half goals, but Crystal Palace, they came back. They'd answer when Mateta would score, then they'd get awarded a penalty in stoppage time, and Olise would step up and put it away. Newcastle hosted Fulham, and after Raul Jimenez was given a red card, Newcastle would take over, dominating possession and eventually scoring and then breaking the floodgates. They'd win 3-0. Everton went on the road and beat Burnley 2-0. They won four in a row and 4 or 5 since getting that 10-point deduction in the table. My West Ham, they look good. They beat Wolves 3-0. Lucas Paqueta, he assisted on all 3 goals, including 2 to Mohamed Kudus. Man, he's been on a tear for the Hammers of late. I'm not looking forward to him having to leave the club to represent Ghana in the Africa Cup of Nations, but he's so good. He's going to light up for Ghana in that tournament too. Mohamed Kudus, look out for him. You're going to remember that name. So good. Brentford Aston Villa, they had a thrilling match. Brentford would go up 1-0, but after a Ben Mee red card, it was originally yellow, but VAR upgraded it. Villa would come back. They'd win that game 2-1, and it got feisty at the end. There were some cards handed out. Arsenal won 2-0 in a hard-fought match against Brighton. And then in a battle of Premier League giants, we'd get a 0-0 draw between Liverpool and Man U. Dallo would get a red card late in that one. 2 quick yellows. I don't agree with that 2 quick yellows there, but hey, the game was pretty much wrapped up at that point, but he's going to miss some matches now. So after 17 matches, Arsenal sit atop the Prem. Liverpool and Aston Villa, yes, Aston Villa, are tied for second. Then last year's champions, Man City, sit in fourth. Premier League, they don't give players much of a break over the holidays. They have some fixtures coming up Christmas weekend as well during the week next week, and then those are followed up by New Year's Day, so no Christmas break for those guys. The Bundesliga, you had some big matches in Germany over the weekend. Bayern's did their thing. Leverkusen beat Eintracht Frankfurt 3-0, and Munich beat a tough Stuttgart team 3-0. Harry Kane had 2 in that one. Wolfsburg would go down a man early, but still beat Darmstadt. Leipzig beat up on Hoffenheim. Bochum skunked Union Berlin, and Heidenheim won on the road against Mainz, while Freiburg beat Cologne. Mönchengladbach and Werder Bremen started the weekend off with a 2-2 feisty draw, and Dortmund had to come back to secure a draw against Augsburg. So Leverkusen still lead the Bundesliga. They have a 4-point edge over last year's winners, Bayern Munich. The Bavarian side still need to make up for that postponed match with Union Berlin when they were snowed out. Leipzig and Stuttgart run out the top 4. And there are Bundesliga matches during the week on Tuesday and Wednesday. Then they'll get a massive break and coming back January 12th in the new year. Little different than the EPL, I guess. In Italy, in the Serie A, you had a surprising start to the weekend when Genoa would hold Juventus to a 1-1 draw. Napoli picked up a much-needed win over Cagliari. AC Milan skunked Monza. Fiorentina beat Verona. Atalanta beat Salernitana. Torino beat Empoli. And Lecce beat Frosinone. Inter Milan had a tough matchup on the road against Lazio, but a terrible giveaway by Lazio set up Lautaro Martinez's scoring. And then they'd get a second goal, and Lazio would pick up a late red card, so Inter get the 2-0 win. Bologna continue their surprising start to the season by shutting Roma out. So after 16 matches in the Serie A, Inter Milan sit atop the league. They have a 4-point cushion over second place Juventus. AC Milan behind them, and Bologna sitting in fourth right now. Bologna manager Thiago Motta is this Italian side playing some of their best football in the Serie A, so good on them. La Liga, you had Osasuna starting the week off well with a big win over Rayo Vallecano. Celta Vigo beat Granada 1-0, and Girona skunked Alaves 3-0. Real Madrid throttled Villarreal 4-1, where you had 4 different goal scorers, including Englishman Jude Bellingham, who's just been on a tear. Some surprising results, too, though. Athletic Bilbao beat Atletico Madrid 2-0. Getafe would go on the road and beat Sevilla 3-0, and Barcelona would go up against Valencia, only to tie 1-1, so that wasn't ideal for them. All the other fixtures in the league ended in draws, and much like the Bundesliga, there'll be fixtures there in the midweek in La Liga, and then on the weekend they'll have a makeup game between Atletico and Sevilla, who had their match day 4 canceled, but they won't commence again until January 2nd. So with most teams playing 17 matches, Girona is still top of the La Liga. That is so crazy for me to say. Like, that has to be one of the most underrated news stories of the year. What they're doing in Spain is crazy. Hopefully I didn't just jinx their season. Real Madrid is just behind them in second, followed by Barcelona, Atletico Madrid. Heading to France for Ligue 1, disappointing Lyon went on the road and surprised Monaco, beating them 1-0. 85th minute goal by Jeffinho is the winner there. Another shocking result had Le Havre beating Nice 3-1. That game had 2 red cards for one red card for each team in that one. Lens beat Reims. Brestois won on the road against Nantes. Montpellier picked up a big win over Metz. Strasbourg beat Lorient, and Marseille won at home against Clermont-Foot. Big matchup between Lille and PSG ended in a draw. Kylian Mbappe with PSG ahead with a penalty, but Canadian Jonathan David would secure the draw when he was at the right place at the right time and head it into the back of the net. Rest of the games would end in the draw. So all these all the French league teams will play on Wednesday, and then they go on a break till January 12th. After 16 games, PSG sit atop the league. 5 points behind them is Nice, followed by Monaco and Lille. NHL news real quick. You had some more coach firings. St. Louis Blues fired Craig Berube and named Drew Bannister from the Springfield Thunderbirds as the interim head coach. Berube was almost with the team 6 years and was the head coach of the Blues' only Stanley Cup winning team in 2019. But they were 3-7 leading up to the firing. So, yeah, they've been 2-1 since the change. We'll see how that helps their season. The Ottawa Senators joined. They fired coach DJ Smith. Jacques Martin will serve as interim head coach, while Sens legend Daniel Alfredson will be joining the staff as an assistant coach. So it'll be cool to see him on the side there. On the ice, we had some good matchups. You had the Battle of the Connors, where Bedard would score a nice little snipe there, but McDavid got the last laugh as his Oilers beat the Blackhawks. Oilers are looking unstoppable in their 8-game winning streak, but they've come down to earth, winning 2 in a row here. So one to the Lightning, one to the Panthers. They're still 20 points behind the division leader Las Vegas, so they got some work to do here yet. They can't just settle for that hot streak they had. Predators are riding a 4-game winning streak, find themselves in the thick of it in the Central Division. The Stars, Avalanche, Jets, and Preds are all within 4 points of each other. Out east, the Bruins and Rangers are still the league leaders, but the gaps are closing. The Leafs and Panthers are right there behind the Bruins. My Flyers are slithering up on the Rangers following their great play of late. Like I said earlier, though, on a bunch of podcasts now, the East is wide open. The Columbus Blue Jackets are the only team under 500 in the Metropolitan Division, so the East could shake up on a weekly basis. We'll see where we are in a week's time. Nikita Kucherov of the Lightning still continues to lead the league in points. Brock Boeser of Vancouver and Austin Matthews of Toronto still lead the league in goals with 23. Aiden Hill of the Knights still leads the league in goals against and save percentage. He's been doing great for the Knights. Bedard still leads the rookies in points and goals, the number 1 overall pick there. UFC 296, you had a pretty good card. Main event, Leon Edwards going the distance with Kobe Covington taking the one-sided win. Alexander Petonia would beat Brandon Royval in a decision. Shykat Ramanov would stay undefeated when he submitted Stephen Thompson in the second round. Paddy Pimblett beat Tony Ferguson by decision. And perhaps the best fight of the night was in the prelims. Irene Aldana defeated Carol Rosa by decision, but you should see their faces. There was so much blood there. It looked right out of a Carrie movie. Both fighters leaving it out there. In boxing, you had the last ever broadcast with Showtime. End of an era. Unbeaten WBA super middleweight champ David Morrell Jr. pummeled Sena Agbeko, and they had to call it in the second round of that fight. So it's the end of the era. Like we said, Showtime boxing will no longer exist. So at least they went out on a bang. NCAA basketball, wild week in college hoops. If you want more hoops, specifically NBA, check out my page. Tune in to NBA recaps, drop them every week. But, man, during the week in college hoops, you had some upsets. UNLV upset Creighton, and Northwestern, the only team that beat Purdue, lost to Chicago State. Massive upset. The weekend, a marquee matchup with that Purdue team I mentioned, giving Arizona their first loss of the season. Michigan State pummeled Baylor to give them their first loss. Clemson lost their first game of the season, losing to Memphis in the Battle of the Tigers. Penny Hardaway is that Memphis team playing great, and they're ranked now, moving to the top 25 following that win. Some teams that stayed undefeated. Houston winning over Texas A&M in a close one. Oklahoma beat Green Bay, and James Madison beat Hampton. Northwestern did bounce back a bit, beating DePaul on the weekend. And Purdue, they moved back up to number 1 with that win over Arizona, who dropped down to 4th. Kansas is in 2nd, while Houston still not getting much respect, undefeated, sitting in 3rd. There are 4 undefeated teams in the top 25. As mentioned, Houston in 3rd, Oklahoma in 7th, James Madison in 20th, and Ole Miss in 25th. Women's side, you had a pretty wild week in women's hoops. Texas picked up a big win over Arizona to stay undefeated. The weekend, you had South Carolina crushing Presbyterian by 70. NC State stayed undefeated, beating South Florida. Caitlin Clark doing her thing, dropped 38 in a big Iowa win over Cleveland State. Kansas State and Utah each got big wins. Utah's Alice Pilley, easy 20 points in 20 minutes for her. She's dominating with that Utes team. Seton Hall gave UNLV their first loss of the season. UCLA won a close one over Ohio State to stay undefeated. And USC also stayed undefeated with a 50-point win over Cal State Fullerton. So yeah, South Carolina still number one team in the country. UCLA, oops, there goes my light there. And NC State are just behind them, both undefeated. Next, Iowa, who has one loss, followed by undefeated Texas and USC. Other teams in the top 25 without a loss, you got Baylor, Marquette, Creighton, and TCU. To baseball, I know it's still far away, but the Giants, they signed Korean League star outfielder Jung-Hoo Lee on a 6-year, $113 million contract. Doesn't seem like much compared to Ohtani's, but speaking of Ohtani, we know he signed that 10-year, $700 million deal with the Dodgers. It was announced soon after this podcast there that the star will only get $2 million a year for that deal, and the remaining $680 million will be deferred. So that puts the legendary Bobby Bonilla contract to shame. This opens up the doors for the Dodgers to sign players now, as they're not taking as big a hit per year. But they'll be paying for this for decades. And the Dodgers didn't stop there. They agreed to acquire right-hand pitcher Tyler Glasnow from the Tampa Bay Rays to help bolster their pitching staff. So lots going on in baseball. We'll see if they're going to try to do anything with these deferred contracts, because it can change the game quite a bit here. If you have an owner willing to pay it, though, so be it, I guess. But I'll wrap that up, and we'll jump to our short here. This one is a short, but the holiday's just around the bend. I thought of some Christmas memories I found in the shame pile. A few Christmases in a row there where I did more than just shovel snow. You know, on those later nights around the holidays, buddies would come over, we'd hide in the room and go sledding up our nose, I guess. Not ideal, and I'm not one to have regrets, but maybe should have chilled out a little bit and not done that as much, but that's what you did back in the day. I remember around the Christmas season, going online to see who was online and shared this dirty hobby. I believe it was MSN, because I don't think a lot of us were using Facebook. It was that weird window in between. Yeah, dating myself a bit here, but yeah, you'd see who would be up, who would be online. You'd be like, hey, run to the city. And they'd be like, sure. And then, yeah, you'd pick someone up, go pick up your shit, consume, and then dispatch. Like, I don't know, what a weird, were these even friendships? You were just drug users together that shared a common goal of getting high. It was weird, not good by any means, but like, yeah, I'm not condoning using drugs. I'm not shaming you if you do. But if this is something you're doing, you know, whoever, whenever, like a Shakira song, you feel like shit, reach out, man. You shouldn't be doing drugs alone during the holidays, or if that's what you're about, whatever. But that's what I did. Don't recommend it. Yeah, you feel like shit a lot of times, and that's a big reason why I stopped doing it and haven't done it since. But yeah, that's my super short. Picking up drugs in the city during the holidays in a nutshell. But that's episode 41, guys. Thanks for coming out. Lots of good sports coming up. Lots of bowl games. Lots of Crown Premier League. Lots of football. And like I said, if you're into the NBA, check out my other NBA recap. It's up on my pages. But yeah, episode 41 in the books, guys. Take care. Happy holidays. Ren City out.